To this now, protests continue in Minneapolis and other U.S. cities following the fatal shooting of 37-year-old intensive care nurse Alex Pretti on Saturday by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers. The Department of Homeland Security claims the agents fired in self-defense after Pretti, who they say had a gun, resisted the attempts to disarm him. But Pretti's family and eyewitnesses have dismissed this, saying he in fact had a phone in his hand, and in fact it was not a weapon. So let's get the very latest now. We're joined by Executive Director of the Minnesota chapter of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, Jaylani Hussein. Good evening to you, Mr. Hussein, and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, before we even get into a lot of what has happened, let's start from the ground. How would you describe the situation currently?
In Minnesota, it's extremely tense. We are waking up again to another murder of one of our neighbors, and this has been incredibly testing to our state. But at the same time, I'm very confident that we are seeing an incredible amount of resiliency in our state right now. Neighbors and community members and leaders are in connection, and we have been in this way for now nearly a month and a half.
And is that resistance, does it seem to be working, especially when we've seen it go on for weeks now and we've seen the desperation of people on the ground? Does it seem like things are moving somewhat?
Well, what's actually happening is that we're noticing more and more people are becoming, constitutional observers. We are seeing more and more people mobilize. So after the murder of Renee Good and also the shooting of Luis, who also was shot literally a week after Renee, more and more people are now signing up to becoming observers. More and more people are paying attention to ICE raids. And that is actually increasing the capacity of our community in responding. But that also means we are seeing the same escalation from these ICE agents who are untrained, and most of them really have no real understanding of what they're doing. And you could clearly see how chaotic, how aggressive, how they escalated the situation. Peaceful protesters and observers just holding a phone, being targeted by physically being pushed. As you can see, Alex actually came to the rescue of a woman who was physically pushed, nearly, hit her head in the back of what would be a car there. And as Alex rendered aid, to try to render aid, he then comes under the attack of these ICE agents to the result of his murder on broad daylight. And now we have the federal government that has been complicit, that are actually lying about the facts on the ground. And thankfully, because of so many observers, we now have many angles of exactly what took place. They can no longer hide behind their lies, and it is starting to break. We had number of leaders today speak up about what took place, and we're starting to see for the first time some members of their party starting to speak up. I would consider a little late in this moment, but it is the change. The tone is changing.
I want to get to what the U.S. president said in just a moment, but there is something that I've been listening to you over time that you've been saying, and you're saying that there appears to be a sustained targeting, and there's a pattern to target Somali Americans. And we've heard what the U.S. president has had to say in public, even in Davos recently. Let's perhaps talk about that.
Well, South Africans are not any different. Most South Africans have known the lies that have come from this president. And this is an old story. In fact, the reason why he's targeting Somali Americans is because of his anti-Blackness. President Trump, even long before he was a president, had a history of being racist toward Black people, specifically those who rented from the apartments and the buildings that he had. And he had a distaste for Black people, even leading up to the Park Five, the 5 young men who were wrongfully charged for an assault and a murder of a young woman. And that led to this history. And President Trump has done certain things in his first administration to cover for that. He gave a lot of money to Black colleges. He's also, passed one of the best criminal justice reforms in the country that nobody thought would pass. And he was using those two pieces as a way to cover for his racism. And now in this administration, he's back. The idea of saying Somali is another code word for Black. And for most Africans today, Africa is the only continent right now that nearly has 50% of its nations under a travel ban from the United States. This is not by accident. This is the darkest continent, the Black people's continent, and he is targeting this continent because of that. And that is why later this week, and we are as community organizing on the ground, and there have already been calls, but we will be planning to call for boycotting and officially ending the bid for the United States to host the World Cup in the United States. The United States is not safe for people of color, and specifically for Black people. We know some of the countries that are even participating from the African nations, their visitors are going to have not only a hard time, some of them may not be allowed, and also their own visitors who are U.S.-based, U.S. citizens are being targeted right now. Somali Americans came through the United States through legal pathways. 97 to 98% of them are legal residents or U.S. citizens. In fact, the majority of our community are children. 51% of them are born in the United States. So this targeting, it is a dog whistle blow at specifically targeting the Black community, the African community, the African immigrant community. And there has to be consequences for the first time. And I welcome those African nations who provided reverse travel bans against U.S. visitors. If you're not allowed, your people are not respected, then technically Americans should not be allowed either. And then that's the way we need to respond to this bully at the White House right now.
And speaking about the U.S. president, I want us to bring up a social media post, his Truth Social post that he, effectively posted a couple of hours ago. And he says, "I'm sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He has not been involved in the area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me. Separately, a major investigation is going on with respect to the massive $20 billion plus welfare fraud that has taken place in Minnesota and is at least partially responsible for the violent organized protests going on in the streets." How do you respond to that?
He's lying. He's been lying from day one. He continues to lie. He targets Congresswoman Ilhan Omar because she's Black. She's a strong Congresswoman who speaks the truth. That is why he continues to target this community. The fraud numbers continue to go up. I don't know where these numbers are coming from. In fact, the president has continuously pardoned fraudsters of this nation, people who have stolen billions of dollars, who are his friends. He has continued to pardon them while he continued to claim that he's going after fraud. This is not about fraud. This is not about targeting of, immigration violations. It is a targeting of political retribution, targeting politicians, specifically in Minnesota and others, including Ilhan Omar, the governor of the state of Minnesota and others, and specifically continuing to get into this pathway where now I think more and more of his own base are starting to not only reject it, but calling this out. And they have just lied about everything. They continue to lie about what happened. We saw the videos and they said that this young man, this incredible hero, was pointing guns at the law enforcement. There's no evidence to show that. But they continue to lie. This is who we see. President Trump is the same president who said that there's white genocide in South Africa. We know that there's no white genocide in South Africa. But again, he will lie. That is how he behaves. And it's time for people to continue to stand up in this moment and not allow for this president to get away with these lies.
Thank you so much for bringing us the very latest. Appreciate your time. That was Executive Director of the Minnesota chapter of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, Jaylani Hussein.